Please excuse us, my mother-in-law said. My daughter is a med student, and her studies keep her very busy. On the day of the engagement party, there was an empty seat on my husband's side. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law noticed my gaze and approached, looking quite apologetic. I told her she needed to be here, my husband Kenneth said, expressing his frustration with his sister and apologizing to my family. We smiled and reassured them, saying, "Don't worry about it." Seeing our understanding, my mother-in-law added, "We hope you'll get along well with our daughter too." I nodded, "Yes, of course." At that moment, I didn't think too much of it. Since my in-laws and Kenneth had left a good impression, I assumed his sister would be the same. My name is Holly, and I'm 33 years old. Kenneth and I registered our marriage 2 months ago and are planning to have our wedding ceremony next year. Around the time of our engagement party, my mother fell ill and was hospitalized. I wanted to wait until she fully recovered so she could see me in the wedding dress she had always dreamed of. In the meantime, I decided to embrace my role as a housewife. Before getting married, I worked as a doctor in a hospital. However, the demanding nature of the job took a toll on my mental and physical health, affecting both my work and personal life. Although I couldn't leave my patients immediately, I eventually resigned from the hospital on the advice of others. Perhaps a large hospital wasn't the right fit for me. During a period when I felt inadequate and embarrassed about my career, I met and married Kenneth. Raised in an ordinary family, he was surprised to learn I was a former doctor but saw me for who I was beyond my profession. "I'll work hard to keep you smiling," he would say, heading to work diligently every day. For him, I dedicated myself to cooking and housework. Thanks to Kenneth, I can now live my life with a smile. As my health gradually improved, I began considering re-entering the workforce using my medical license. However, amidst our happy life, one thing concerned me: my sister-in-law, whom I had never met. According to my in-laws, she's a busy med student. We were supposed to meet at the engagement party, but she couldn't attend due to her studies. Having passed her exams on the first try, she must be quite capable. Since Kenneth and I registered our marriage around the same time as the party, we missed the chance to meet her. I hoped we could eventually greet each other. One day, Kenneth and I went out to the city. We enjoyed looking at furniture and matching dinnerware together. As we were thinking of taking a break, a voice called out, "Isn't that Kenneth?" Kenneth turned around, and I followed his gaze. A flashy young woman stood there, dressed in a low-cut dress and high-heeled pumps with a strong perfume scent. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Kenneth asked. The woman named Rachel scrutinized me, making me feel uncomfortable. Kenneth introduced her to me. "Holly, this is your first time meeting her, right? This is my sister, Rachel. So this is her." "Nice to meet you, I'm Holly," I said, politely greeting my sister-in-law. She was different from what I had imagined, but I reminded myself not to judge people by their appearance. As I reflected on this, Rachel laughed mockingly. "Oh, so you're already married. Wow, Kenneth, you're handsome and have a high income, but you married such a plain woman. That's just weird." I was taken aback by her blatantly rude comment on our first meeting. It was true that Kenneth, 4 years younger than me, was good-looking and worked for a major pharmaceutical company, earning an above-average income. While strangers might think we were mismatched, I couldn't understand how she could say such things to my face. Sensing the tension, Kenneth stepped forward to defend me and scolded Rachel. "Hey, don't say such rude things. You should properly greet her, especially since you missed the engagement party due to your own convenience." Rachel laughed it off without any concern. "Well, I had a mixer to go to after a long time." Wait, wasn't she supposed to be busy with her studies? Shocked by the reason for her absence, I decided to try and mediate, worried that this could escalate into a heated argument between my husband and his sister. Well, we're meeting today, so that's good, right, Rachel? I look forward to getting along with you." Rachel glared at me. "What do you do anyway?" "I'm going to be a doctor, you know. Don't get too familiar with me." Her aura of "I'm important, I'm special" was overwhelming. I've encountered many people with high pride, but she was exceptional. I tried to calm Kenneth, who was about to yell, and replied, "I'm currently a housewife. I used to be." But Rachel interrupted me before I could finish. "A housewife? That's just like being unemployed. Unemployed people are society's garbage, and now you're my sister-in-law? Seriously? Oh, are you just a parasite living off my brother's money?" I felt my cheeks twitch involuntarily. In Rachel's mind, housewives seemed equivalent to unemployed people, which was an extreme view. My attempt to keep the peace had clearly backfired. Rachel, enough. Holly isn't the kind of person you think, Kenneth said, stepping in to defend me. It's okay, Kenneth, I said, calming him down. Even though our interaction was brief, I felt I understood what kind of person Rachel was. She must be intelligent, having passed her exams on the first try and keeping up with her credits, but her personality left much to be desired. Being a doctor is a wonderful profession indeed. It's a tough journey, but good luck with it, I said, smiling warmly. Ah, what do you know? I don't need your fake advice. Oh, and by the way, I'm still a student, so I'll pass on giving a wedding gift, thanks. My husband seemed too tired to get angry anymore. Just go, he said, gesturing as if shooing away an animal. Rachel complained in response. I came to say hi, but what a bad attitude. Well, whatever, I'm busy too, she said, before turning and walking away. After Rachel disappeared from sight, Kenneth deeply apologized to me. I'm really sorry about my sister. I can't believe she said all those rude things. She used to be more reasonable, I said, shaking my head. It's okay. Honestly, my impression of Rachel was nearly the worst, but it's better than having a fight because of me. We managed to exchange greetings, and from now on, I just need to keep my distance. Thank you for defending me so many times. You know what? Let's change our mood and have some coffee. I'm craving some delicious coffee. I smiled and Kenneth nodded, looking relieved. A few days later, I visited a large hospital nearby, carrying a tote bag with flowers and a change of clothes. I reached for the door of a private room. Mom, it's Holly. How are you feeling? I called as I opened the door. My mother smiled happily from her bed. I regularly visited her to help with her clothes and personal care. Today, she seemed to be in pretty good spirits. In place of my mother, my brother Andrew, removing his stethoscope, answered. He works as a doctor at this hospital and keeps a close eye on our mother's condition. Seeing his familiar face always brings a smile to mine. It's been a while, Andrew, he said, smiling as he continued to record our mother's progress. I set down my tote bag and took a seat on the round chair beside her bed. Dad was here a moment ago, but he left for a conference. Bad timing. It would have been nice if the whole family could have been together. What a pity, my mother chuckled. This hospital is actually run by my father. I used to work here as a doctor just like him and Andrew. It feels strange being here, a place that's both my family home and former workplace. After enjoying a chat, my mother, feeling sleepy from her medication, said, I think the medicine is working. I'm feeling a bit drowsy, and started to drift off. After tucking her in, my brother said, seeing both of us might have comforted her. We smiled at each other and left the room quietly. My brother and I sat down on a couch in the lobby. How are things with Kenneth? Are you two getting along? He asked. I nodded. Yes, we're having a good time every day. He laughed and patted my head. Ever since I was young, he's always been overly concerned about me, and that hasn't changed even after my marriage. Everyone in our family was worried when you left the hospital. Meeting Kenneth was the best thing that happened to you, I think. I've been able to recover because of Kenneth's presence. While we were chatting, a nurse called my brother away. I'll be right back, just wait here for a bit. I nodded and watched him go to attend to a patient. He's usually busy, second only to our father, the director. It's almost miraculous that we had time to chat. I would have been helping out at the hospital just like my dad and brother if things had been different. Feeling slightly gloomy, I sighed. Hey, what's the unemployed Holly doing here? A familiar loud voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see my sister-in-law Rachel standing there, looking down at me with a malicious smile. Her emphasis on unemployed irked me, but I maintained a polite smile. Hi, Rachel. I came to visit my mom today. You know we're in a hospital, so it's better to keep your voice down. Feeling uncomfortable at this encounter, I inwardly groaned. Rachel ignored my subtle hint and continued to speak loudly. Wow, your mom's hospitalized. I came here for clinical training today, Rachel said. From her attire, I had somewhat guessed that might be the case. It's not unusual considering she's a med student at a nearby university, but I wish I hadn't run into her. Even so, her appearance is a bit off. I discreetly glanced at Rachel's outfit and couldn't help but feel dismayed. Though not as extreme as the last time we met, her makeup was still flashy and her loosely tied hair was casual. I wondered if she understood the need for a more professional appearance. When I worked as a doctor, I wore makeup too, but I always prioritized cleanliness and kept it subtle to avoid discomforting the patients. Doesn't anyone advise her on this? Glancing around, I noticed several medical students and doctors, many of whom were my former colleagues, looking pale and uneasy behind her. Most of these doctors knew me well, and the medical students, upon being whispered to, seemed to realize that I am the daughter of the hospital director. To them, Rachel must appear as a reckless med student offending the director's daughter, her loud voice disrupting the hospital's decorum. I tried to suggest moving elsewhere. Rachel, please keep your voice down. It's disturbing. Rachel exaggeratedly sighed and interrupted me. A woman like you, unemployed and catching a high-income man like my brother, must be a relief to your mother, right? I bet you're making him pay for your mother's hospital bills, aren't you? Just like a trashy family would. She smirked, making it seem like I was some sort of embarrassment in front of everyone. Her awful words shocked not only the nearby doctors and medical students but also the passing patients who frowned. Being publicly called unemployed and having my innocent mother insulted was too much for me. Hey, enough is enough. One of the doctors, unable to stand it any longer, stepped in to stop Rachel, but she wouldn't listen. She deserves to be spoken to like this. Rachel laughed. The doctor who intervened furrowed his brow at Rachel's remark and left, muttering, "Your life is over, kid." Rachel seemed clueless about what that meant. Then my brother Andrew, who had finished his work, came back. Seeing the tension between Rachel and me and sensing the strange atmosphere, he looked puzzled. "Ah, Andrew." Rachel's attitude changed drastically with Andrew's arrival, and I was taken aback. She was the epitome of putting on a facade. She changed her tone and started cozying up to my brother. I couldn't help but notice that even her facial expression seemed to alter. Andrew is young, talented, and handsome, even from his sister's biased view. Being the successor to her father, he's quite popular. I instantly realized that Rachel was aiming for him. "Holly, what's going on?" Andrew asked, addressing me by name, to which Rachel glared at me. "Andrew, are you close with her?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Calling the doctor at her training site by his first name was appalling. Andrew distanced himself from Rachel and casually replied, "Well, yes." Rachel, apparently unhappy with his response, persisted annoyingly. "But she's married, you know. You weren't aware of that, right? Andrew, you're popular. You should be careful." Her sugary nasal voice was irritating. She seemed to mistake me for a rival aiming for Andrew. "I know, she's my sister, after all." At Andrew's words, Rachel froze. "What? What?" I struggled to contain my laughter at Rachel's stunned expression. While Rachel stood there dumbfounded, the medical student who had intervened earlier whispered in Andrew's ear, likely explaining the whole situation. Andrew's expression turned stern in an instant. "Wait, so Holly is the daughter of the director of this hospital?" As Rachel looked confused, I nodded. "Yes, I'm his daughter. I originally worked here as a doctor. I had to quit due to health issues. Now I'm recovering and temporarily putting my efforts into being a housewife." Rachel turned pale at my words. I had heard from Kenneth that she was hoping to get a job at this hospital. She must realize now that after insulting my mother and me, and with my brother hearing it, her chances of employment here are bleak, and so are her dreams of marrying into wealth. I glanced at Andrew's profile and smiled inwardly. "She's unbelievable as a person," Andrew muttered quietly. It seemed he never had any interest in Rachel in the first place. "Rachel seems to be quite excellent as a medical student," I continued. At my words, Rachel visibly flinched. To easily label people as social garbage or belittle them, that's a problem not just as a doctor, but as a human being. Unless you realize what that problem is, you're not qualified to be a doctor. Reflect on that. The people around nodded in agreement with my admonishing tone. Lectured by me, whom she had mocked, and disappointed by Andrew, whom she admired, it must have been a series of embarrassments for her. However, I didn't want her to become a doctor as she was. Doctors not only bear responsibility for lives but also need to empathize with people's hearts, I believe. "Ha! I don't get it," Rachel muttered, feeling uncomfortable with the atmosphere. She turned and hurried away. "Don't run in the hospital," scolded a passing nurse. Startled, Rachel took a spectacular fall. Andrew and I exchanged glances and laughed, resigned to the absurdity of the situation. Half a year passed. Rachel, already known for her bad character, became completely isolated after ridiculing me in the hospital. Her pride led her to heavy drinking, which resulted in a severe injury and hospitalization. Ironically, she was now being cared for by the very doctors she aspired to join. Finally understanding her own arrogance, she expressed regret and a desire to apologize to me. As I heard from my in-laws, she decided to take a break from medical school and planned to start afresh after her discharge, but it would be a thorny path for her. Meanwhile, I secured a new job as a medical doctor at a pharmaceutical company. My role involves researching and developing medications, as well as verifying the safety of new drugs. My father and brother asked if I would return to the hospital, but I wanted to try something new. My mother's health improved enough for home care, and she's looking forward to attending our wedding next year. Seriously, don't even think about having a baby with a guy you've already broken up with. Or did you think a child would keep us connected forever? How naive. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? Looking back, breaking up was the best decision I ever made. Staying with someone so delusional would have kept me from the happiness I have now. Today, I want to share my unforgettable dark past and how I overcame it. My name is Jessica, and I'm a 53-year-old housewife who enjoys doing household chores while watching the morning news. When I was 38, I lived peacefully with my husband Mike. However, around that time, a bit of unrest started to creep into our home. Mike began responding to me with intimidating indifference, saying things like, "So what?" or "and?" He'd cut me off with "I'm busy right now," leaving me feeling dismissed and treated with disdain. It wasn't always like this. Mike used to be someone who loved to chat and would crack jokes to make me laugh whenever he had the chance. But then, something changed. It was such a sudden shift that I wondered if I had done something wrong, but I couldn't pinpoint anything specific. One day, I noticed a faint lipstick mark on the back of a shirt Mike had brought to the laundry. He had come home late from work that day, claiming he had to work overtime. Given that his office was male-dominated, it seemed unlikely that someone with lipstick had leaned against his back. If that were the case, it was too unsettling to consider. Could it be a woman? I wondered. Although I naturally jumped to that conclusion, a lipstick stain alone wasn't solid evidence. There could be countless explanations, like accidentally bumping into someone. I decided to wait a bit longer and observe Mike's behavior more closely. Ironically, paying just a little more attention revealed a slew of evidence of infidelity. For instance, Mike always got up around 2 a.m. to use the bathroom at night. I had never thought much of it before, but it turned out he was using that time to talk to a woman on the phone in the bathroom. I also started finding long strands of hair inside his suit jacket, and sometimes his handkerchief had traces of what appeared to be lipstick. The most damning piece of evidence was a tinted lip balm I found when I borrowed Mike's car for the first time in a while. It would be one thing if Mike used colored lip balm, but this was clearly not his. After 10 years of marriage, the frustration of seeing Mike being taken by someone else, combined with the loneliness and the resurgence of my affection for him, was overwhelming. Is there really no chance of starting over? Isn't there something I can do to make him notice me again? Isn't there a way to rekindle what has cooled off? Just as I was grappling with these thoughts, I discovered I was pregnant. I thought the timing of the pregnancy was a blessing from God. We didn't have children, and the monotony in our relationship might have contributed to Mike's affair. Maybe this pregnancy could be the chance for him to change. Holding on to that hope, I told Mike about the pregnancy, but then, what the heck? Give me a break. This is such a hassle. Let's just break up. I couldn't believe my ears. Looking back, I realized my judgment and expectations were too naive. The likelihood of a man who is cheating coming back is extremely rare. Life isn't like a TV drama where things just work out smoothly. But back then, I truly believed that since we married out of love, we could surely find our way back to each other. Is that really how you're going to respond? It's your child too. Even for the child, it's better if a dad like me isn't around. You've realized that too, haven't you? Seeing Mike's smirking face made my heart skip a beat. That I'm having an affair, pretending not to know about Mike's infidelity and hoping the pregnancy would magically fix everything felt like being pushed off a cliff. I had thought that revealing the affair would create tension and push Mike away for good, but that was another misjudgment. I wanted you to find out. I dropped so many hints, but you never said a word. I was at my wit's end. What I was waiting for you to say was, "This is unthinkable. Let's get a divorce." You really made me go through a lot of trouble. You're kidding, right? I wouldn't bother with such a hassle if it were a lie. I have a cute 24-year-old girlfriend now, a 38-year-old about to get fat from pregnancy. I have no use for you anymore. Here, take this as alimony or whatever. Just agree to the divorce, he said. I cried for 3 days and nights. Eventually, when Mike stopped coming home, I found the resolve to divorce. 5 years have passed since then. I was afraid of growing old and being single, but fortunately, I remarried my childhood friend Steve, also a divorcee. We lived modestly with our child Chloe. Steve had also been cheated on by his wife, making him a fellow survivor of a messy divorce. Sharing the same pain made life with him very comfortable. On our anniversary, Steve would book a fancy restaurant every year, and for my birthday, he would get me something slightly expensive. I felt cherished. I hoped these days would continue forever. As we celebrated another anniversary this year, it was supposed to be a delightful dinner at our usual upscale restaurant. "Wow, Jessica, is that you?" Mike gasped upon seeing my face. "What? Why are you here?" I couldn't hide my disgust. What a tragedy. I had accidentally run into Mike coming out of the restroom. "What? I'm here for a business dinner. Unlike you, I'm busy, huh?" Mike glanced over my shoulder and approached briskly. "Wow, so you had the child, huh? The one you were pregnant with when we split? That's gross." He grabbed my child's hand, looked closely, and began to say outrageous things. "Seriously, don't have the child of a guy you've broken up with. Oh, could it be that you couldn't forget about me, thinking that if you had a child, I'd never be able to cut ties with you? How naive is that? Hey, what do you say?" Mike, grinning, seemed to be having a great time spinning the child around by the hand. The child's face twisted in distress, and he started crying out loud. "Daddy, Mommy, help. Some stranger is taking me." There, I'm your daddy, and your mommy's right over there. You're just like her, a stupid child." Just as Mike blurted out those words, a man towering over 6 feet appeared from behind and forcefully grabbed Mike's arm. "Excuse me, but that boy is mine." Mike's bewildered expression almost made me burst out laughing. "Huh? Is this guy your new husband, Jessica?" I didn't answer Mike's question. "I'm not sure what you've been saying, but surely you don't think you can make someone's child cry and get away with it, do you?" The tall man glared at Mike, a glimpse of a tattoo peeking out from his arm. Noticing it, Mike instantly turned pale. "Wait, hey Jessica, tell your husband to stop." "Excuse me, that woman is not my wife." Confused, Mike glanced back and forth between me, the man, and the screaming child. "Whoa, what? Then who is this child?" Before he knew it, the man had Mike's arms firmly bound. "This man is a lunatic repeating nonsense. Someone call the staff. There's a man here harming a child." The man's outcry stirred the restaurant. What a day this turned out to be on such an important anniversary, I thought to myself with a smirk. It certainly became a memorable day, although unexpectedly. "Waiter, over here." I saw this man forcibly grabbing a child's arm. I called out. My words left Mike gaping in shock. "Wait, Jessica, what? What's going on? Seriously, I don't understand what's happening." As Mike frantically protested, I said, "I am not that man's wife, and that child is neither mine nor yours." "But he was right behind you. You were blocking the narrow passage to the restroom entrance, standing there like a post, preventing the boy from entering. He was simply following his father to the restroom, and you obstructed him." "What? Really?" Mike's face fell as he realized the gravity of his mistake. "You might want to make people the butt of your jokes, but you should be careful about jumping to conclusions. Why don't you look around a bit more?" "Shut up. I don't need to be lectured by you." Indeed, my valuable words probably wouldn't reach someone like you. I'm not suspicious. Well, any man who approaches an unknown child, grabs their arm, and then uses baby talk like "I'm your daddy" is undoubtedly suspicious no matter how you look at it. But that was. And then you tell the woman in front of you, "Mommy is right there, isn't she? Are you still under the impression that we're married?" As I said this with a smirk, Mike turned red with anger and shouted, "Don't mess with me." But the louder Mike's voice, the tighter the grip of the man holding him. Ow. Hey, man, back off. I'm innocent. Innocent. It's undeniable that you made my son cry, isn't it? But that was a misunderstanding. I quickly interjected. It's a fact that you misunderstood and grabbed someone else's son. Mike glared at me and said, "You jerk." Yikes, getting glared at by a suspicious person. How scary, I responded sarcastically, feigning fear in my voice. This seemed to irritate Mike even more, and he began to struggle wildly against the man restraining him. "Still thinking you and I are a couple, huh? Or could it be you haven't forgotten about me?" I taunted, using the same accusation he had thrown at me earlier. Predictably, Mike got angrier, and sensing the danger, The tall man quickly pinned him to the floor. "If you thought you could escape from me, you're sorely mistaken." While the man might have meant it lightly, the tattoo visible on his arm made the threat seem all too real. Mike must have thought, this might be the end for me today. "Come on, Jessica, tell them it's a misunderstanding," Mike pleaded. "But dragging someone else's child by the hand isn't just a misunderstanding," I retorted. "I thought he was my child," Mike said, his voice breaking like a child's, which made me burst out laughing. "You claim he is my child without even acknowledging or paying child support. Did we ever discuss acknowledgement or child support after our divorce?" "Well, no. But you knew I had no intention of acknowledging, which is why you never contacted me, right?" "Idiot. I wouldn't just let it go. If I had a child, I'd make sure you acknowledged and paid up one way or another." "Then why?" "That time, the pregnancy test was wrong. I went to the gynecologist, and it turned out I wasn't pregnant, which solidified my decision to divorce." Yes, during those 3 days when the topic of divorce came up and Mike stopped coming home, it's true that I spent that time crying. But considering I might have had a child, I couldn't just divorce without clarification. So I first went to the gynecologist. I wanted to sort out alimony, child support, and future living expenses in my head, even if we were going to divorce. If avoiding the divorce would benefit the child, I was prepared to endure. However, at the gynecologist, there were no signs of pregnancy, but they did find a tumor on my ovary. During the surgery for that, I happened to share a room with Steve's mother. Steve and I were childhood friends, so I knew his parents well. Reuniting with Steve during his visits, we became close again. At one point, I thought of the pregnancy as a blessing from God to make things work with Mike, but in reality, it brought me to someone who made me realize that parting ways with Mike was the right decision. It also led to the early detection of my illness. Despite having one ovary removed, last year I gave birth to Chloe, my child with Steve. It may seem like I've been through a lot, but in truth, it's all been for the best. Upon learning everything, Mike turned pale and muttered, "No way, I got dumped by that woman." Needless to say, I couldn't help but laugh. It's no surprise a young woman wouldn't want to be with an aging man like him. At that moment, a police officer appeared. It seems someone from the restaurant had called them. Mike received a stern warning from the police. The misunderstanding was cleared up, and he apologized profusely to the child's family, preventing the situation from escalating. The scolding from the police seemed to have hit him hard. He even came to apologize to me. Since Mike doesn't know where I live now, he actually went to my parents' house to express his apologies to my mother. He admitted that the way we parted was the worst and that he was wrong. Aging, abandoned by his affair partner, and finding himself increasingly isolated, the recent incident seemed to have broken him, leaving him to feel the loneliness of having no one to comfort him. Well, it's too late for apologies now as far as I'm concerned. I continue to ignore Mike. Honestly, if we hadn't met there, I probably would have gradually forgotten about him altogether. Steve noticed I hadn't returned to our table for a while and came to the restroom to check on me. However, he decided to watch from the shadows, thinking this might be my first and last chance to get back at Mike. Of course, I was ready to jump in if anything happened, but that guy restraining Mike was just too strong. That guy apparently used to live in Mexico and was the captain of a football team there, I mentioned. No wonder he's strong. Guess I had no role to play there. I was seriously scared, thought he was from some dangerous profession or something, Steve said with a laugh, and I couldn't help but laugh along with him. Normally, one might say something like, "Not very manly of you," but Steve doesn't have to deal with Mike, and I believe it was a problem I needed to resolve myself. I acknowledged that I lacked strength during the divorce. In the end, I simply went along with the divorce as Mike wished and received a standard amount of alimony from Mike and his affair partner. Reality doesn't always progress like a fairy tale, so getting an exorbitant alimony was out of the question, and I had lost the strength to fight back. But I believe I finally became truly strong by standing up to Mike with unwavering resolve in the end. Now I can proudly face Steve and Chloe. Coincidentally, this year's anniversary became a new beginning for me. Now, with Steve becoming a freelance architect and his income doubling, I quit my part-time job and am enjoying life as a relaxed housewife. When I ask Chloe, who's somewhat in a rebellious phase, to do something, she complains. But when I stay silent, she quietly helps out. This trait of hers is something that only Steve and I secretly find irresistible. Though Chloe is our only child due to a late pregnancy, Our family of 3 and our 2 dogs live a life that's lively, perhaps too much so. Despite never having children with Mike, I was able to conceive and give birth at an older age with Steve, even with just 1 ovary remaining. In a way, I consider this to be fate. As a child, I secretly dreamed of marrying that special someone destined just for me, and who would have thought that dream would come true with a second marriage? Sometimes I allow myself to indulge in such dreamy thoughts. With these reflections, I cherish the ordinary days that come my way, days that are anything but ordinary, filled with love and gratitude.